Now, I advise you to keep standing because I get to say one other thing. Please welcome Glenn Beck. You all say.
Well, hello, CPAC. What an honor to be with you today. Truly an honor to be with you, and to be the last speaker of the day is quite a responsibility. I want to tell you, I've been here for the last 3 days, and I've had a chance to meet a lot of you, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. How grateful I am to be able to speak to you today and talk to you about some of the things that have been on my mind and on my heart, and great to see the youth here at CPAC. And to also, I want to say something. I was here a few years ago and I spoke about the progressive disease, the progressive cancer that was in the GOP, and I wasn't invited back for quite some time. Now with Matt and his new people that are working with him on the board, they have taken CPAC in a direction that is actually responding to you. And I think that is fantastic. With the addition of Dr. Zuhdi Jasser on their board of directors, the Muslim Brotherhood moles are not going to be welcome here at CPAC anymore. I want to talk to the youth here just a little bit. I want to talk about that you are right now in a time, you're coming to adulthood in a time when the amount of debt created by the central banks and the socialist programs all around the world now exceed the value of all combined human wealth and assets. We now owe bankers more in debt than the combined value of every home, of every car, of every factory, of every farm. In the U.S., our combined debt of unfunded socialist mandates now exceeds 7 times total GDP. We are stealing the future from the young to allow for our own prosperity today. We need clean air, right? We have to provide for free college education for immigrants. We have to pay for abortions for 16-year-olds. We have to bail out Wall Street. We have to protect Main Street, don't we? We have to make sure everyone gets their fair share. What a pack of liars all of us have been. But yet, in the hallways of CPAC, I don't see that. I see smiles, I see determination, I see energy, I see hope. The young are resilient. And it reminds me of a boy I want to talk to you about, a boy that we all know, a boy that we all have read about, a boy that was born into a world where he was burdened by his mistakes and laziness of his parents and his grandparents. His name was Charlie Bucket. I don't know if you remember Charlie Bucket. Charlie Bucket from Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie was born into a world of hopelessness, of despair, of grayness. He was naturally bright. He was naturally hardworking. He was the one that was providing for his family. They were wholly dependent on him for their food and their shelter. A family who has left it to him, the burden of providing for their survival. Just because he was capable, they all left themselves in bed. But somehow, Charlie Bucket was still bright and cheerful. Somehow or another, he still had hope. And then Wonka announced magic. Wonka announced a golden ticket, and the world went into a frenzy. A chance for Charlie Bucket to escape from the grayness and the dreariness of his life, from the 12-hour workdays and the struggle just to get by. Free passes into the candy-filled world of the gates behind. Wonka was saying, there is still magic. Charlie, there is still a chance for you. Charlie couldn't afford to buy any chocolate bars, but he was perceptive enough to find a coin that was dropped in the gutter, and he bought himself a bar. And he opened it, and he found this. This is the original Willy Wonka ticket from Charlie Bucket in the movie. This was his golden ticket. And what happened after he got his golden ticket? The scene in the movie where the crowd on the street discovers that Charlie has the very last golden ticket, a mob forms around him, cheering him, tugging at him, patting him, jostling him, tugging at his clothes, tugging at his hair, wanting just to be next to him, wanting perhaps just to get his ticket. And they're drawn to him, drawn to it, drawn to the magic that ticket held, to the thing that could free them from the doldrums of their everyday gray lives. And a man grabs Charlie Bucket by the shoulders and he tells him, run. Run. Charlie, run. Run home, straight home. Don't stop until you get there. And he does run, and he runs for home. But on the way, if you remember, he stopped. He has his ticket. He wants to rush home to his family to share the wonderful news that I've got a golden ticket, but he is stopped. Does anybody remember what stopped him? Slugworth. In Roald Dahl's world, whenever you get a golden ticket, a Slugworth always shows up. Whenever you are given that one thing that you want, the freedom, the thing that you hoped and wished for, the thing that represents magic, a Slugworth is always there. The businessman with a wry smile and pockets full of cash, there to tempt Charlie, offering to buy the boy's virtue, a chance to double your good fortune and exploit the opportunity that fate has given him. Charlie goes in and meets Wonka and tours the factory, and along the way he gives into his temptation and he pockets the one thing Slugworth wants, the everlasting gobstopper. And if you remember, in the fizzy lifting room, Grandpa and Charlie break the rules. And at the very end, after seeing all of the other kids that, I want an Oompa Loompa Daddy. At the end, all of the fellow kids that went into the chocolate factory, all of them left with their gobstopper. And they all left because of their own greeniness. And what does Wonka say? He looks at Charlie and says, good day. Closes the door, and Grandpa and Grandpa and Charlie stand out and say, what happened? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And he storms in, and Wonka turns to him and says, you broke the rules. You lose, Charlie, you lose. And that's when Grandpa looks at him and says, if Slugworth wants that gobstopper, he will get his gobstopper. Come on, Charlie. Charlie has that moment of decision. Do I sell out, or do I hold to my principles? And he quietly walks up to the table and puts his gobstopper on the table, because after all, he did break the rules. And he puts it on the table next to Wonka, and Wonka puts his hand and closes his eyes and says, so shines a good deed in a weary world. Then he spins in his chair and he says, Charlie, my boy, you won! You won! So why the heck am I telling you the story of Charlie Chocolate? I have absolutely, just thought it was a great story. Good night, everybody. Why am I telling you that story? Because I want you to answer this question. What is your golden ticket? What is that magical thing that has a chance to free all of us from the burdens that our parents and our grandparents have left us? After the the past few days, we've heard some great ideas, and I like that one too, but we've heard the ideas of how to advance conservative initiatives. But tonight, before you leave, I want to talk to you about some ideas that perhaps seem less practical, perhaps less tactical. Perhaps they were not going to do as much to increase our reach on Facebook or increase the email open rates, and they're not going to result immediately in convincing our courts to go and restore the water rights to farmers or the repeal of Obamacare next year. But while they may not have an immediate practical effect, they are entirely the reason why we are here. We, as the self-proclaimed guardians of liberty, we, as the people, are here to protect ideas. And the ideas that we often take for granted. We assume that we're covered just because we are voting. We're voting against one party. Or sometimes we're allowed to vote for our party. When we do start voting for the candidate, do we actually vote for the candidate that represents our principles, or are we voting against the other guy? We are here this weekend at the Conservative Political Action Conference. So what are the things that we are to conserve? What are the ideas that we are to conserve? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it doesn't stop there. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, their houses, their papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others that are retained by the people. These are our principles. This is why we are here. This is what we stand for. Now, how familiar do they sound to us? Do they sound familiar to most homes in America? Do they sound familiar and they are talked about in the halls of the White House or in the halls of Congress or in the hallways of our government-funded schools? Are those rights talked about and discussed in our churches? Are they discussed and taught around our own kitchen tables? 240 years ago, our forefathers pledged to each other and to the people that they would defend those principles with their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. The sons and daughters of liberty bled together to throw off the chains of a dictator in order to secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity. Personal liberty, individual rights, privacy, religious freedom. What is it that unites us as conservatives? Not a party, but principles. What defines our cause? You can ask somebody on Fox or on CNN about the core of the conservative movement, and people will tell you most likely it's lower taxes or smaller government. But lower taxes and smaller government, while they are fine, that is not a cause, that is an effect. It is the result of our dedication to the original principles and an understanding of the rights endowed to us by our Creator, by nature's God. Not just for Republicans, not just for Democrats or independents, but for the entire species of mankind. The men who founded our nation understood these principles. They understand that we possess free agency, a capacity to choose our own morality, our own faith, that we are capable of working with others voluntarily, in cooperation for the common good. We're capable of competing with other people for resources and achievement. We are individuals, each of us as a whole entity, distinct and separate from the rest. Our founders knew that our rights were a part of us. And without those rights, we cease to be whole. We cease even to be human beings. This is why they didn't start a democracy. They started a republic. They didn't elect to have a king. They didn't choose a path of forced cooperation like communism or socialism. They didn't place power in the hands of the wealthy or elite. Instead, they chose not to subvert human nature by giving some men power over the lives of others, but rather to allow each man to live as an individual, to be recognized that each of us should be allowed to pursue our own happiness in our own way, according to the verdicts of our own mind. The American Revolution was not a war against England. The American Revolution was a war for an idea that nobody had ever heard before, that men can rule themselves and others do not have the right to control the lives of others. That was the revolutionary thought that came from America. For the first time in world history, a government was created with a certain and single justification for existing, and it was this: the recognition and protection of each citizen's rights. Rights that are inherent to each individual, not granted by them by a government. They're simply automatic. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That is the reason our government exists. That's it, to protect the rights of man. The founders didn't cite any other reason in the Declaration of Independence. That was the only reason for government. The Declaration doesn't say to make sure that there's a chicken in every pot. It doesn't say so we can make some really nice, safe places where nobody will say anything mean on your college campus. It doesn't say so we can ensure that everybody gets a free tuition. It doesn't say so some oil corporations can have their special deals in Saudi Arabia. It doesn't say anywhere that they're going to bail out the big banks. They're not going to bail out anybody on Wall Street. Nowhere in our documents say that. Progressives, however, in both parties, believe that government should do more than just protect our liberties. And they're baffled by our love and respect for the founders and the Constitution. To them, the Constitution is nothing but a roadblock, an inconvenience. Maybe it's something that worked a couple of hundred years ago. Maybe that did. It was fine when we were a frontier nation, but it doesn't offer any functional solutions today. I mean, we're a modern industrial society. We have Facebook now. They couldn't have seen Facebook coming. We have intercity blight. We have airplanes now. We have radical Islamists that are trying to build nuclear bombs. So many people now believe that the world is so complex that a 200-year-old document can't have any relevance anymore. They believe that governments should be eliminating poverty, should plant trees, should create jobs. It should control our resources to ensure that nobody gets more than their fair share. They find our allegiance to the Constitution and the Founding Fathers absolutely puzzling. Tonight, I want to dispel their confusion once and for all, and I want each of you to personally think for a moment and rediscover what it actually means, beyond politics, what it means to be a conservative. We are dedicated to the Constitution and its principles, not because we cling to our Bible and our guns. We are dedicated to the Constitution and its principles because we are clear-minded, because we are rational, because we have the courage enough to recognize the self-evident truth that mankind by his nature has a God-given identity, that we are endowed by this Creator, that we are endowed by this Creator with those rights that are ours simply because we exist. If you don't know why the Constitution matters, then you are the one that is confused, not us. You don't understand the nature of man. It baffles me how people can look at themselves in the mirror every day but miss what's really behind their eyes. How do they miss who they really are? You are a sentient being. You're born with free agency. You're capable of choosing right from wrong, morality from immorality. The world tells you, and they like to tell you this, you are worthless, you are powerless, you are incomplete. That is a lie. The world will tell you this, that you need more government, more protection. You need more rules and more edicts. I tell you now, you as an individual are the most powerful being ever created by God Himself. When we say we're dedicated to the eternal principles of the Constitution, that is what we mean. That we recognize and embrace mankind as the powerful beings that they truly are. Man is who he is. A is A. The Constitution is remarkable. And no matter what we do now, should we lose it, God forbid, it will endure because it is factually correct. It recognizes that no man or any woman has inherent power over another. Our rights are ours and they're individual, just like our DNA. And because our rights belong to us as individuals, the rights of 5 of us do not conquer the rights of 1 of us. Those who stand opposed to these principles, those who stand in opposition to these principles will dismiss natural law. They wish to live in a world where man isn't man, because for them, man is too imperfect. They detest you. They fear you. They believe that you are too corrupt, that you are too stupid, you're too selfish. You can't make your own decisions, and you shouldn't be allowed to. They are terrified of the real world in which they find themselves in, because it's not in their control. They wish for a world where people don't have unique talents, that somebody is allowed to accomplish something that is unique, something that they can accomplish that maybe another cannot. In their world, man's nature must be subverted, transformed, bent to their will. Always for the reasons that they claim are for the common good. They cannot have us be individuals. We must instead be possessions of the state, to be used to create this better utopian world. And because they believe that we're not capable of creating this world on our own, we must be forced to live as we are told, so the elites can create this world for us. And in the end, those who call themselves our saviors always pull out guns, and we become their slaves. To them, Mao is right. You don't have power because power comes from the barrel of a gun. But let me ask you this. What is the most valuable, precious commodity on earth? It could be bullets. Okay, we could go there. Security. The most precious commodity on earth. Gold is the highest valued commodity. Some would say that it's oil. Some would say now that it is water. Some will argue that it is media airtime. Some will even argue that it is Facebook likes. But they're all wrong. The most valuable commodity on planet Earth, the one that the elites must have their hands on, is man. Man is the most valuable commodity on the planet, and it is what progressives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, egomaniacal businessmen and socialist senators believe that they have to control. There is no more valuable commodity in existence than the productive energies and the labor of mankind. The men and women who live in fear of a world that they can't control seek that one thing, power over you. They want it, they need it. They must dictate your behavior and control us, to use us as a resource to enrich themselves and those in power. Progressives will never be satisfied. Their fear and their shame make them want to have power over every man, woman, and child forever. And the expense of maintaining that power is enormous. This is the reason we have the multi-generational debt, the unfunded mandates of a welfare state that assure that every American born today is a slave. And I want you to understand, this is vital, that every single person in this room hears this. If you are a person that has a child today, that child, as it draws its first breath, is chained, each child, to $1,006,208. That's their share of the debt. The minute they draw their breath, that's their fair share. Let me ask you this. The Republican Party, the party of Abe Lincoln, that abolished slavery over 150 years ago. Where have you been when every American today has been born a slave again, burdened as indentured servants the instant we draw breath? It is immoral, it is wrong, and it must end. We cannot change the other party, but we must change ourselves. The party of Abe Lincoln, the grand old party, has been there the whole time. They have been there with the blacksmith the entire time, forging every link in every chain on every American neck. How ridiculous it is that we now talk about $40,000 of your college debt. Forget about your $40,000, that's chump change. I almost said something else. That's chump change. Forget about your $40,000, you owe $1 million already. It's misdirection that would embarrass David Copperfield. And we are all guilty. We are enslaving our own children. For what? For our own comfort? They are enslaved to the unholy alliance of big business, big government, and big banks. They are slaves to those businesses, those banks, slaves to the false prosperity that we now enjoy today. This is taxation without representation. I believe we fought wars over that. From the dawn of man until 1780, the advance of human progress was almost imperceptible. key measures like life expectancy, household income, total wealth, starvation rates, infant mortality rates, for tens of thousands of years. To measure those, you could only measure them over centuries because they never moved. But then what happened? From 1790 onward, human progress began to accelerate at an exponential rate. The Industrial Revolution was born here. America became the technology and production engine of the world here. Why? What happened in America? It was the Constitution of the United States of America. It was equal justice for all men. This is our golden ticket. From the day our Constitution was ratified, America rose like a rocket. It took off for all the world to see, and we carried the rest of humanity with us. Individual liberty and a government prevented by law from interfering with us. This is what made America great, and it is the only thing that can make America great again. So let's compare. Let's compare and contrast what we know to the alternative. Because mankind has spent over a century, the last 100 years, experimenting with a live A/B test, liberty versus tyranny. And what are the results? What was the leading cause of unnatural death during the 20th century? Because it wasn't cancer. It wasn't car accidents, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't terrorism, it wasn't gangs, it wasn't inner city violence. The greatest murderer over the last century was governments. Socialist, communist, fascist, and theist governments. During the last century, totalitarian governments murdered over 120 million of their own citizens. And that doesn't count the countless millions who died of disease and malnutrition, suffering on government health care plans and in government food programs. And they did it always, time and time again, in the name of progress, in the name of for the better good. While the American people, on the other hand, were delivering the world a cure for polio, nuclear fission, refrigeration, telephones, televisions, the internet, lunar rockets, the iPhone, and encryption. Progressivism and socialism at the same time were delivering the world death camps, forced starvation, gas chambers, forced abortion, and genocide beyond our wildest imagination. If the goal truly is to make America great again, the one thing we do not need more of is a government deal or a government program. We need our government to do the one thing it is allowed to do in the Constitution, and that is get the hell out of the way of the American people and let our ingenuity free. Our founders recognized this. Over 200 years ago, they recognized this. They pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes. They vowed to protect each other's rights against a government that sought to control them. As conservatives, it is now on our shoulders. It is this generation now that bears the responsibility for today and what comes next. That slogan there is absolutely right, Our time is now, right now. It falls to us to follow our God-given principles. I said and I opened, I am honored to be with you at this conference. But I want to make it clear. Our movement is not about personalities, and it is not about parties. It is about each other. It's about our rights. Do either parties truly discuss this and claim these principles to be their own in a meaningful way of action? Who's even talking about these things outside of this conference? Have they demonstrated, either party, a willingness to actually defend our liberty? The parties don't matter. Principles, core principles matter. It's about what we stand for, not what we stand against. And our time is now, and it must not be lost. It is your movement, your movement. We cannot lose your movement to a hostile takeover by a charming slugworth with pockets full of cash. I want you to leave here today. I want you to leave here today with a couple of things that you really know. And I want you to know this. No candidate. My candidate is Ted Cruz, but it's not Ted Cruz. It's not Ted Cruz. It's not Marco Rubio. It's not Donald Trump. It's none of them. No candidate has ignited the conservative movement. You are responsible for what has happened in the conservative movement. You, the grassroots, have set the country and the people's imaginations on fire. You are bringing new people to the party, not any of those guys. You did that. The Tea Party generated that interest and began defending liberty years ago. And before the Tea Party, it was the Ron Paul people that were standing for these principles. Most Republicans believe being a conservative means you're going to be unpopular. A lot of Republicans believe that if you have those conservative values, it means you're going to lose at the ballot box. Now, I want you to hear me carefully. Bull crap. Because of your efforts, right now, there are more Republicans, more conservatives in office at the state and local level than there has been at any time since 1920. Don't tell me that conservative principles don't work. Don't tell me standing up for God-given, time-tested principles don't win at the voting box. They do. Stop being ashamed of our principles. I want to tell you something else. Shame on all of us for asking for loyalty oaths. Loyalty oaths should never be made to parties. That's a step towards fascism. This is far beyond Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, Tea Party, evangelical, atheist, white or black. You don't owe loyalty or an oath to any party, but especially any party that fails to defend the principles that are outlined in our documents. You don't owe a loyalty oath to the government. Our loyalty and our dedication is owed to the original principles, to our God, to our rights, to each other. That is really the magic and the secret of America. That's it. That's the core of it. It's our nature as beings on earth. It means the survival of each individual and as nations on earth. It comes down to what do we owe ourselves, what do we owe our children, and what do we owe each other. I want you to look around the room right now. I want you to look at somebody that you don't know. I want you to turn around and look at somebody. I want you to see the people around you. It's weird. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? I don't know why people are so uncomfortable when they ask to look in somebody's eyes. But look somebody in the eye and ask yourself this question. Do you want any less for them than you? Do they deserve any less than the full rights that you have? The answer is no. And that's a wake you up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. question, and you will always say, Daddy, Daddy, hey, does somebody else have more rights than me? What? No, go back to bed. We all know those things. Our principles are found in one another. Our principles are found in the oath of the Declaration. And I think it's time to restate them and truly listen to every word. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure those rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever that form of government becomes destructive to those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their happiness and their safety. It is their right, comma. It is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security, and for support of this declaration with a firm reliance in the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. As we leave here today and move toward this election, let those words ring true to you and through you. Let the politicians who will seek your vote hear those words through your mouth and through your actions. Let them understand that they are your servants. You are not theirs. Demand that they uphold the office that they take, and that oath of office is above the oath to their party. Demand that they reaffirm their singular vow. I will protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Let the party bosses and the super PACs hear that they will only have your support as long as they take and uphold that oath with you. Let the media hear it from you in interviews and the social media posts, in articles and the books that you will write. Let the bartender and the cab driver hear it tonight. Let your families hear it back home tomorrow. We are all brothers and sisters. We are the defenders of freedom. I have great confidence in the future of America, because our cause and the cause of freedom and individual liberty is a righteous cause. Like our rights, it was endowed by our Creator. And those who fight against it are battling nature itself, and they will lose. We only need to raise our voice and honor our pledge to one another and refuse forever to surrender our way of life. May you carry this spirit into the hallways of this hotel tonight. May you carry this spirit into the streets outside tomorrow. These are the principles that we must run home to. We have Slugworth. Run home, Charlie. Run home. Don't stop until you get home. These are the principles we run home to, because this is our golden ticket. Have faith in our principles. Rediscover them. Have faith in them. Have faith in the God who granted them to you. Let it be said of all of us, so shines a good deed in a weary world, so that when we are judged, when it comes our turn to face our Creator and tell Him what we spent our time on, He can turn in His throne and smile at us and say, "You've won. You've won."